All right, here we go. Welcome to another episode of the Non-Victimation Podcast. I am here today with Hugh Crane of Crane TEC Knives, who I had the honor of meeting not too long ago. You were doing a class here with La Rosa
Yes.
and it was clinch training and knife defense. It kind of combined together, and it was really excellent class.
Nice. Thank
Yeah,
you.
so
Yeah,
had a good time with that.
that was the La Rosa annual alumni event. So
Hmm.
he had asked me to um, guest instruct on that, and so I was obviously happy to do so. So
Right.
he did the clinch fighting, he did the tie clinch, and then from there we progressed, like you said, into offensive blade work. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, and
glad you
like,
liked it.
no, it was a great class. It flowed together very well between the two segments, and everything. It kind of went from, uh, the clinch fighting in close, and then just that transition of moving to the knife and how to defend against that, how to reverse that situation.
Right.
That was all excellent.
And that wasn't planned.
Yeah.
So interestingly enough, I keep finding that the more he and I collaborate in a sense,
Hmm.
the more like-minded we are. Like it just flows. Like it just happened to flow that way.
Right.
And when he taught his segment, and I'm like, dude, this is gonna work perfectly.
Yeah.
And then the last time I ran a class here, um, we had originally booked um, fighting from the clinch. I did a fighting while carrying concealed, and then it was clinch based, how to draw your weapon, when to draw your weapon,
Hmm.
and so forth. And then I ended up moving. I called Dan. I'm like, hey man, we got to move this because Nick's running a course the same weekend. Uh, he wants to attend. I'd love for him to attend, and some of his guys are going to attend. And
Hmm.
let's just move it if we can. So check with Dan, make sure we can his schedule and availability here at Tech Hub could accommodate that. Um, and then I went to Nick's and I just started laughing. I'm like, dude, I'm gonna cover a lot of this stuff. It's just gonna flow.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
it's good to find like-minded people that you can work with.
Right.
So
Yeah. Nick is a really cool guy. I've talked to him a number of times. He's got some really great ideas about how to run things. I know that he does a lot of jujitsu training and that sort of thing.
yeah,
So always lots to talk about there. So
yes, yep.
right on. So for people who don't know much about you, can you give us a kind of a little bit of a rundown of like your background, like how you got set to where you are?
Yeah, it's man, it's kind of a long story, but
Right.
so I started, as far as my training goes, we can segue into how we got to where we're at with
Yeah.
Crane Tech, but I started off traditional martial arts. Well, I started boxing when I was 10. My grandfather was a professional boxer. He did not want me to get into it, but I loved it. And I
Yeah.
love lifting weights. I loved, when I was young, I was a big Ninja Turtle fan and all this stuff when you were a kid,
Right.
back in that time. And so everything fighting, I was into it, right?
Yeah.
And then when I got older, when I was 18, I started formally training martial arts, but again, started traditional Kempo. And we had a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu guy that would come in. So I got exposed to Brazilian Jiu Jitsu.
Mhm.
I did that for a few years. And then I met some guys that were doing MMA. Some of them were amateur, working their way up to the UFC. So some of them
Mhm.
are pretty well known. Some of those guys, which I had the privilege. I didn't, the UFC was still pretty new
Yeah.
at that time. Like I guess it wasn't new, but it was still in more or less its infancy compared to where it has become at this
Right.
point.
Right.
Because I'm 42 now, so I'm not a young buck anymore. And this was in my early 20s.
Hmm.
So over 20 years ago now at this point, I guess, or 20 years ago. Um, so I got good connection with them and started training. I was getting my butt kicked every night, right?
Yeah.
And then I go train with some other guys and I would practice what I had got my butt kicked on the night before with these guys, and I
Hmm.
was, beating up on them. And
Right.
so it was a good training environment. From there, then I um it, again influenced by, you know, the movies and stuff.
Yeah.
I think that was when the first Batman came out with what's his name? Christian Bale, right?
Okay.
Where he
Right.
trains ninjutsu.
Yeah.
So I went and did this live-in instructor ninjutsu program.
Oh,
It
nice.
was actually kind of cool because we got to travel the world. So I did that. I went to Thailand. I did Muay Thai.
Hmm.
We went to Thailand a couple occasions, stayed for over 2 months each time. So I got to do Muay Thai in Bangkok, down in Phuket, up in Chiang Mai in the
Wow.
mountains. Amazing experiences while there. Came back, continued doing MMA for a little while, and then I started doing Krav Maga. Um,
Okay.
and let's see, from there, uh, I think at that point, at some point, I became a correctional officer. I got
Hmm.
certified to teach Krav Maga to law enforcement.
Nice.
Yeah, and then um, that's not the best environment, as you know, for
Yeah.
um, young family man, I guess, right? My wife and I were about to have a kid, and when inmates start knowing what kind of vehicle you drive
Yeah.
and stuff, it's wife gets a little uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
So she's like, "Hey, you probably should find a different career path."
Right.
I had an opportunity at that point to manage a Krav Maga studio, so I took
Hmm.
it. And then from there, I opened up my own place. I started doing some Filipino stuff. One of my good buddies is a coach with the IMB. So I don't know if you're familiar with the IMB, but it's like international martial arts and boxing. A lot of Filipino martial artists,
Hmm.
Jeet Kune Do, like guys that trained with Bruce Lee. I don't want to butcher their background and stuff,
Right.
but
Right.
um, that's kind of their world. So when
Hmm.
we get together, it's a lot of stick and knife training, and
Hmm.
that's really where I've been able to develop what we do now as far as
Hmm.
the edge weapon stuff goes. I've trained with some other um, Filipino martial artists, have the privilege to train with them, and um, really from there, uh, so I went to this is kind of off topic, but years ago I went to a Tony Robbins UPW, Unleash the Power Within, right?
Right.
One of those things.
Nice.
It was a great experience. Don't get me wrong, but one of the things I picked up from that was he called it the 4 millimeter rule,
Okay.
and I'd never heard of it at the time, but it really resonated with me and stuck with me. And it was basically like you're going to always find a plateau. You're going to hit a plateau with whatever you're doing, and the best way to break these plateaus is really to find experts in that field who know the tiniest detail that can take you to that next level, the four
Hmm.
millimeter difference. And I think he related it to golf swing, right? And the
Okay.
difference between him hitting the ball straight and hitting it in, the sand or out of play was 4 millimeter difference in how he
Hmm.
held his club, right? So
Right.
super tiny. So basically, finding those people that have that experience and that knowledge that can teach that to you. So I started seeking like who's the best? Who's the best in this field? Who knows how to use knives? Who knows how to use guns? Who knows how to fight? And then so that's what I've done. And I don't want to do a bunch of name dropping here, but
Hmm.
if you see them on the internet, I've probably trained with them because
Nice.
I'm seeking those people who I know are better than me,
Right.
so that I can gain those little nuggets of uh, that gold, that
Hmm.
information to help with what I teach and help my students. Yeah, so one of the things that one of the gaping holes that I realized because I had done jujitsu, boxing, Muay Thai, as I said, and I had already
Hmm.
started, working with edged weapons, which working in a correctional environment.
Hmm.
Um, Edged weapons are potential threats,
Yes,
right?
definitely.
Improvised weapons. So having the knowledge to defend against them more than use them at that time became
Hmm.
pretty important to me. I worked in um, when I was a correctional officer. I had quickly got promoted into, it was a small promotion, but into our detention unit, which was we held a lot of 5-5 custody inmates.
Hmm.
And there's some PCs and stuff, but some of them pretty dangerous. And
Right.
um, so on our unit, we had found anything from knives to even spears. It was crazy
Wow.
when you think about that.
Yeah,
Somehow they got a hold of some PVC pipe and turned it into a spear. And yeah, so
that's
that was on
crazy.
the top of my mind,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Okay, I need to know how to handle this kind of stuff. And
Hmm.
obviously, the more you learn, the more dangerous you realize it is.
Hmm.
Um, but um, so with that, I kind of lost where I'm going, man. It might be the bourbon. I don't
It's okay.
know.
Yeah.
Rein me back in. Rein me back
So,
in.
just for anybody that is curious, the bourbon shelf that we have over here with the American flag is not just for show. we actually invite our guests to partake and enjoy what we have, and yeah, we're having a good time.
Yes. I think our conversation started probably a half hour before this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go. But
So
so we were talking basically about your background,
background, yes,
and
yeah,
then
yeah.
so how long were you actually in corrections?
So it was actually very short-lived, just a little over a year.
Okay,
I was in corrections before that opportunity.
congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. It's one of those,
Mhm,
it's a career where, and I started in corrections because I wanted to be in, I knew I wanted to be in law enforcement,
mhm,
right? In college, I started at the U of A and then I went to JC, local JC, and started studying criminal law, death investigation. And then I went back to, this was all around 9/11 time, right?
right.
I got inspired to try to be in either the CIA or the FBI at the time, or the military.
Mhm.
So then I started studying Farsi. I was learning how to
Oh,
speak
nice.
Persian. I was learning computer sciences. I was like, what's important to the government right now? What can I
Right.
do to become an asset? Right. So I was doing that, and locally, it was very hard to get picked up by anybody at the time because there was a
Mhm,
lot of people trying to get in.
mhm,
Corrections for me was a way to get my foot in the door for law enforcement and then move into something else, right? Hopefully, I was going to at that point apply for the feds or something. But like I said, I had an opportunity to open up that, or not open, but manage that Krav Maga studio. My wife wanted me out
right.
with our daughter on the way, so I respected that, and I felt because teaching was martial arts, self defense, teaching
Mhm,
had been a passion of mine for since I was a kid, right?
right.
So I was like, all right, this is an opportunity for me to live out my passion. Let's go with it. And if it
Mhm,
doesn't work out, I can always go back, right?
right. Yeah.
Thankfully, it worked in a way that I could continue.
Mhm,
So then like I said, I had my own gym, and I ran that for a while until we ended up moving up to Phoenix,
mhm.
and I let my buddy take over, and then COVID hit and shut that place down.
Yeah.
So now I just run seminars occasionally. I actually stepped away from teaching for a while because I was focused on the knife business, right? So
Okay.
getting into Crane Tech, TEC, so Crane TEC, Tactical Everyday Carry. Um, in training, I was working a lot with people who carry knives, firearms on a daily basis, some
Mhm,
for a living. And we found that there were things that I wanted to do with my blade that I could not do with what we were carrying, whether it was a pocket carry, a folder, or just being carried in a way that it was not accessible from either hand. And I knew that this was an important tool that I had to be able to access with my right or my left hand in a perspective from a perspective of a clinch fight because
mhm.
the, the blade is an up close and personal tool,
Right.
and I'm likely to going to be hands on or with an attachment, as we say a lot. So
Mhm,
either you're grabbing me or I'm grabbing you. Can I still access this tool? Because you can't always access your firearm. If your dominant hand is being controlled, or you have to use that to control somebody else, right?
right.
My blade is a secondary tool, and I should be able to access that with either hand.
Mhm,
So like our motto is accessibility and efficiency matter. So
mhm,
accessibility piece is in the sheath. I believe that the carry method is just as important as the blade design itself,
mhm.
right? So being able to access my blade with either hand is imperative. If I can't access it with either hand, I might as well have left it at home on my nightstand, right?
Okay.
It's no good to me.
Right.
And then if I pull it on somebody, the reality is we are now at lethal force.
Yes.
So why would I not want my tool to be as efficient as possible?
Mhm,
So we double edge our blades, like our flagship models are Tempest, and it started off, first design was a double Tonto,
mhm.
4 edges. Initially, I was told that was impossible. I wasn't going to be able to do it. They're like, you can't do this. You're not going to be able to line up all 18 of those lines.
Right.
You're not going to be able to do it. You're going to lose this line. You're going to have to get it machined. And that was a long process, a learning process.
Mhm,
I had some machinists, CNC guys just destroy my steel. And I'm like, guys, this isn't working. So then luckily, my buddy, um, was a machinist by trade. And I'm
mhm.
like, dude, you need to design some jigs for us. We've got to figure this out. And he did. He figured it out. He figured out the angles we needed to do. This was before I was working in CAD. This was just like it's literally a pencil drawing right on some
Right.
paper, and then you know grinding out a little soft piece of wood and like, okay, this is my my prototype.
There you
You know,
go.
things have now changed, right?
Yeah.
But back then it was we had no reference, no computer to tell us what angles and how long our grind lines had to be and stuff to figure it out.
Hmm.
Um, so anyway, so having gone through this in class with the students and just seeing
Hmm.
this, was like, all right, let's go buy this blade. It's out there. Let's go buy it,
Yeah.
right? And it literally 6 years went by, and I was still on the internet looking for it,
Hmm.
right? Now, granted, our company is not the first company to do a double edged blade, right?
Right.
We're not the first company to do a Crombit style blade,
Hmm.
but on the market at the time that I was looking, nobody was doing a double edged Tonto and with we call it our kick, but with a basically a kick in the blade that I wanted,
Hmm.
so that when you held it in a reverse grip, and if you missed your target, if you were trying to control or cut, that you wouldn't poke or stab yourself.
Right.
Nobody was doing that unless you had a full on karambit style with a hook, right?
Hmm.
But that wasn't giving me the angle that I want. I wanted a straight blade, not a curved blade.
Hmm.
I felt that there was benefits of the straight blade that the curved blade didn't provide,
Hmm.
and we get into this in training. Um, and so when I couldn't find it after 6 years, I was like, babe, like I think I got to make this thing.
Right.
She's like, go ahead. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh shit, let's
Nice.
go. Let's go.
Right.
So, I mean, Crane Tech was born there, right?
Hmm.
Um, and then from there, we've made some other blades. We have our push dagger, our PDX, which was a request from some law enforcement officers, like, hey, can you make us something that's relatively inexpensive?
Hmm.
Just something that if somebody's on me, I can just get them off and create that space to get to
Hmm.
my firearm. And I was like, yeah, we'll come up with something.
Right.
Well, better than a push dagger, right? So
Yeah.
we came up with a skeletonized push dagger that I think does that pretty efficiently.
Hmm.
So it's very, very difficult to defend against. And training is simple with a push dagger because if you know how to reach out and touch somebody,
Yeah.
you can efficiently use that tool, right?
Right.
So, and disarms are like, people teach disarms. I don't teach disarms with knives, but some people do.
Hmm.
And you can. I'm not saying you can't disarm somebody. You
Hmm.
can. I think in our class, not I wouldn't say accidentally, but we just
Right.
if I don't know if you remember, but we've kind of fell into a position where
Right.
I was defending against Troy, and I was like, "Oh, look, this happened to be in a place where I can disarm him,"
Right.
and I did that. But we don't bank on it, right? Most of our disarms are either I knock this dude out, or I put the blade that he's still carrying in his body, and now
Right.
he can pull it out, right?
Yeah.
Those are our disarms. So, or maybe we cut his hand and he drops the blade,
Hmm.
but I'm not trying to take it from him.
Right.
So, anyway, yeah. So background is, like I said, pretty extensive, but and I'm still training. I'm still learning.
Hmm.
I don't certainly don't claim to be the know all be all by any means. Like there are guys out there that have been doing this a lot longer, and more consistently, that
Hmm.
have those nuggets that I still want to get. And so every year I'm still trying to train with people, or going back to instructors and coaches, excuse me, that I've already established relationships with, and just keep learning.
Right.
Because the more I can learn, the more of an asset I am to anybody who chooses to spend their Saturday with me in a
Hmm.
class, right?
Right.
So
Gotcha. So, like the training and things that you do, kind of as you learn more and things like that, do you think that that's going to change the evolution of the blades that you design, or are they pretty much
you
set with
know,
what you think they need to be?
so at this juncture, I'm very happy with our designs.
Right.
We have a new one that we're trying to launch. It's called our Poseidon, and that one is a nasty, nasty blade.
Okay.
So with that, I was trying to bridge the gap between the tactical everyday carry, the EDC people, and then the market where they want more of a utility blade for
Hmm.
hunting or skinning. Because I've had lots of requests like, "Hey, when are you going to make a hunting blade? Hey, when are you going to make a kitchen blade?" Because that's what they're into, and I'm like, that's not really our thing.
Right.
You want a nice kitchen blade? There's plenty of places you can go
Yeah.
buy one, right? Like, can I make you one? Yeah, but I'm not gonna put it on my website.
Right.
Before Crane Tech existed, I didn't know anything about steel. I didn't know how to make a knife. Like this was all learning. It's still a learning process.
Right.
This the Poseidon, because of the hook involved, I'm still working out the grind lines for myself to make it by hand.
Hmm.
I've sent it out to a couple manufacturers, and at first I was told, "Hey, we can't grind that. We're going to have to make it, and you're going to have to grind the hook yourself." And I'm like, "Well, that
Wow.
kind of defeats the purpose of me paying you to make me a knife."
Right.
Uh, for me to have to go back and fix it,
Yeah.
and then I'll probably have to recoat it because the coating could get messed up while I'm
Hmm.
sharpening it. Um, anyway, or grinding that final grind and then having to sharpen. So there was some difficulties there, but they think they've worked it out. So we are hoping to bring that to market.
Hmm.
Well, manufacturing their lead times are kind of extensive. So I would say hopefully first quarter
Right.
next year. I'm not sure. Did I bring that to the class? Did I show that one off?
I don't believe you did.
Mm. It's a pretty
So,
sexy knife. I'm
yeah.
excited about it. It might
Uh,
be my new everyday carry.
there you
So
go.
yeah, so it's bigger than the Tempest. So the Tempest overall length is like 7.25
Hmm.
inches. This one is like 8.25.
Oh, wow.
I went ahead and so with the Tempest, the blade is only 3 inches,
Hmm.
right? It's a double tanto, but it's only 3 inches because I
Right.
was trying to stay within the parameters of how can I get this to be able to be legally carried in more places, right?
Hmm.
Now, you can't have a double edge in a lot of states, right?
Right.
You can't have a blade over 3 inches, and there's all kinds of rules and regulations against what you can carry. I was trying to stick within, right? So,
Right.
but the blade is, while sufficient, 3 inches is enough to. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
you can end a threat with this blade,
Yeah.
right? Um, but I chose to go with a bigger blade this time
Hmm.
and really cater to people who don't have those restrictions, right?
Hmm.
So it's like, okay, let's give them what they want. So I'm
Hmm.
very excited about it, and the what we teach as far as the offensive use of the blade
Hmm.
will play in beautifully with this design. But that hook on the back end it's going to create a lot of damage,
Right.
and some people
Nice.
are going to love that.
So I've talked to people before that have said that they would rather be shot multiple times than be cut by a knife.
Yeah, I've heard
Um,
that too. Yeah,
and I don't know exactly why that is. I mean, people seem to have it, it's not necessarily that a knife can do more damage per se, but at the same time, the wounds and things that it does create, I think, are a lot more vicious than a typical gunshot.
right. And I'm not a doctor, but the research that I've done, the people that I've talked to, and what I've heard and read, excuse me, the wound channel is just different, right?
Hmm.
So a blade does not have the same kinetic energy as a ballistic as a handgun, a rifle. But the wound channel can be bigger because oftentimes, well, the blade is just thicker, but when it goes in, it can be twisted to open
Hmm.
that up and pulled out. And oftentimes you'll see people who train with them, they'll when they stick one way, they will twist before they cut out the other
Right.
way to intentionally inflict a bigger wound.
Hmm.
And from what I understand is statistically, you are more likely to survive a gunshot wound than an edged weapon wound.
Right.
So yeah, so I would say that's probably why they would rather get shot than
Yeah.
stabbed. So
So yeah, I think it's one of those things that people underestimate.
yeah,
There's so much, especially because now that it's all political, the whole anti-gun thing and
yeah,
like, why that's such a big deal. It's like, let's just say for a second that you took that away, like they did in the UK. All that means is now you have a spike in, gun or excuse me, knife
right.
attacks and
I
things like
remember
that.
hearing that. Yes, yeah,
It's like statistically, you like look at like what's happening there. It's like you just increase a different type of violence. It's
right.
like you didn't stop what was actually happening.
Yep.
And I think that's one of the big problems we have in this country is that they get so wrapped around the axle of the idea of like guns, and
Right.
they think that just simply removing that is going to remove all violence. It's like that's not true.
No, evil people will do evil
You
things.
know, that's the same thing. Like the politicians love to throw out all these statistics about gun violence, how how many people die per year, not realizing that like I think it's like 60 or 70% of that is uh suicide.
Right, right.
You know, it's like
Or they recognize that they just failed to
yeah,
inform the public of that. It's just because
right.
what is the term I'm trying to think of, but it just adds to their statistic to
Right.
better their point. Right.
Right. So I mean, it detracts from their narrative to say this many people were killed
But
by their own
self-inflicted,
hand
yeah,
by suicide,
yeah,
and there's even another really large percent is actual justifiable shootings by police
Right.
and whatever else.
Exactly.
It's like, so the statistics they're giving you aren't correct right out of the gate.
Right.
Okay. But the other part of that is like, if even if you took all of those guns away, people who are going to commit suicide are going to commit suicide.
They'll find a way.
There's not, that's not something you can stop them from doing.
If they are intent on doing so,
Yeah.
they will find a way. Yeah.
Right. Stepping in front of a moving vehicle, stepping off of a vehicle,
Right.
hanging themselves in private, whatever, even in the prison system.
Yeah.
If somebody is determined to like commit suicide, they're going to find a way to do it.
Right.
And, they've really hammered down on us because they just recently had a suicide in Perryville. And so their response to that, because DOC is very reactive, they don't think long
Right.
term. They have knee jerk reactions to everything.
Sure.
Okay. So the response to this, well, it's like, okay, you have to do walks every 20 minutes and you have to, start writing down in your journal exactly what time you started and exactly what time you stopped. So we can monitor on the camera and see exactly when you were there.
Right.
And somehow that's supposed to stop the situation. It's like that isn't going to fix anything. All you're doing is creating extra work and you're trying to hold the officers accountable on a ridiculous level
Right.
for what they're doing, and then you have supervisors, sergeants, and lieutenants that are going back and reviewing the cameras and trying to match it to the journals. It's like, well, if you have all that much time to be watching the cameras, why aren't you watching it to see what the damn inmates are doing?
Right.
Why are you watching the officers and trying to hem us up?
Yep.
You
Yep.
know?
That was one thing that I really disliked about the department was I felt their concern was more so on avoiding lawsuits than officer safety.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And we have a new director now that is 100% just that. Everything that he does, all of the policies he puts out, if you really look at it, it's designed to cover his ass
right.
and to cover the DOC
Yep.
and doesn't give two shits about what's happening with the officers.
Right.
He's putting policies into place. And this is, from what I understand, the highest level of detention that he's ever worked in was a level two prison.
Oh, really? Okay.
Okay. So he's making his policies based on his limited knowledge there.
Right.
Okay. And so he's taking inmates that are level five that are supposed to be 100% restrained when they come out of their cells
Hmm.
all the time,
Yep.
giving them out of cell time and rec time.
Together.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And so we've had multiple, staff assaults,
Yeah. You're asking for it.
two of which had to be life flighted out of the unit
I mean,
because it was that bad.
yeah.
And one, she's there's a subsection of uh, employees that work for the kitchen. It's called Trinity.
Hmm.
One of those workers was actually raped in the kitchen,
Jeez. Yeah.
and this is all during his administration.
Right.
And he doesn't seem to understand. It's like you're putting so much emphasis on what we're doing, and you're not paying any attention to what they're doing.
Right.
It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. It
You're
doesn't.
making it more dangerous for us.
Yeah. It's a terrible, terrible environment to be working in. And,
Hmm.
you know, I am thankful I had an opportunity to go somewhere else.
Yeah,
I
and
still, I still feel the need to, like I'll always have that desire in me to to protect, or it's just it's in you. Some of us have that in them, and I
mhm,
may not be in a professional capacity, but it's teaching people how to defend themselves
right.
is a way to give back, right? In that in that to some degree. And
Hmm.
when last time we talked, the last thing I said to you, I'm sure, was, "Hey, be safe out there." Because I
Yeah,
mean it. I mean it. I know what you're walking into, and I have full respect for what you do for a living. And every day you go to work, you put yourself in harm's way. Every day I went to work, I asked myself the question as I'm pulling up the complex: Is this the day?
yeah,
Is this the day? You know.
right.
So
So I will say though that working in corrections has taught me a few positive things. Number one, I am exponentially more assertive now than I ever was prior to working
sure,
there.
you have to be. Yeah.
Because being able to tell 80 plus inmates, you have to stop what you're doing and go back in your cell so we
Right.
can lock you in,
Yep.
you know, after chow or whatever it is that they were
Right.
doing. It's like, multiple times in a day,
Yep.
we let them out, they go do what they're doing. It's like, okay, now it's time to lock down again.
Right.
It's like herding retarded cats, but we do it, right?
Right.
know, but it takes some oomph to like say, you have to go lock down now,
Yes.
and, be able to raise your voice to a level where like the whole run knows you're talking and saying, go do this
Right.
now, right? Kind of thing.
But it's interesting. There's that balancing act of being assertive enough to get them to do what you want them to do,
Uh-huh.
but in a way that is not viewed as disrespectful because we know how they are with respect.
Right.
In a way that is not going to get you into a fight in the middle of a pod of 80 inmates, right? So you
Exactly.
have to figure out how to balance that. You don't like you learn skills in that environment
Hmm.
that I don't think you learn anywhere else.
Right.
You learn to talk to people, and in a it's not it's not manipulative, but you learn how to, like you said, to get people to do what you want
Right.
while avoiding that confrontation because it can escalate so
Right.
quickly. Because you know how it is. Some guys just don't want to listen,
Yeah.
or what they're having a bad day, and sometimes you just got, dude, I don't know what kind of day you're having.
Right.
Man, I don't know what set you off, but remember, it wasn't me. I'm just trying to get through the day.
Exactly.
Let's go, you
Yeah.
know, and see it, and let's go. So
Right.
yeah,
It's something that you said earlier. They're basically adults that need to be babysat,
yeah,
you know, because a lot of times they act like 4-year-olds,
yeah,
you know. They're gonna, and I don't mean that they're gonna throw themselves on the ground and throw a tantrum necessarily,
right, right. No,
but they will push every limit as far as they can. They're always constantly trying to see what they can get away with,
absolutely,
you know, and you have
absolutely.
to like be very consistent about, nope, we're doing this,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. We had
Eh,
talked about that earlier.
yeah.
That if you're doing your job by the book, it can be an extremely difficult job.
Hmm.
It can. It's a fight every day, not necessarily physically, but verbally, right?
Yes.
Psychologically, it is a fight
Right.
to get them to comply with the rules. So you're not compromised, right?
Hmm.
Because I guarantee, and you know this, if you bend for one guy, the
Yes.
next guy expects it, and if you don't bend for him, now it's favoritism, and now you get political with, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a tough world in there.
So I was working in a detention in Central Unit when it was still open.
Mhm.
Um, and they had a whole upper level that was just detention.
Right.
And same thing, they were level 5 inmates. They weren't allowed to come out of their cells unless they were
Yep.
fully restrained, that kind of thing, right? And so we have to like feed them in their cells.
Yep.
So we're delivering food to the cells, right? And I had been working there long enough that I built rapport, and they understood who I was, and they just knew what I was about, right?
What to expect on your
Yeah,
shift. Yep.
right.
Yep. Yeah.
But every once in a while, you'd have somebody who doesn't know me, who's, you know, going to decide he's going to see
Yep.
what he can get away with, right? And this one, it was like talking about how, you know, he was going through this, he was going through that, you know, and he was kind of hungry, and he was asking, you know, could he just get a little extra, or could he, you know, take, you know, whatever, this and that. And it's like, nope,
No.
you know, it's just really. And the inmate right next to him, in the cell next to him, he would looked at me and he goes, well, at least you're consistent.
Yeah.
And in a way, it made me laugh, but at the same time, it was sort of a compliment.
It
It's like,
is
yeah,
absolutely. You're right.
you
Okay.
know, it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm always going to say the exact same thing.
Yep.
You know, there's certain things you can't do, certain things you can. That's just the way it is.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah, I heard that before. Well,
yeah,
Crane, you're consistent.
yeah, right, and
Consistently saying no.
yeah, and in a lot of ways, that earns their respect
Right.
because they know they can count on that.
Yeah.
You know, I've
Yep.
even had other inmates that, like, you know, again, somebody who doesn't know me well, really well, was complaining about something, and I told him I would go deal with the situation, just not right now.
Yeah.
And I had another inmate stick up for me and say, "Hey, if Negrete said that he's going to go do that, he'll
He'll
do
go
it."
do it. Yeah.
Yeah, just
Yep.
because they knew that that's how I was,
Right.
you know.
Yeah. That consistency goes a very long way in there.
Hmm.
Now, these guys have nothing to do all day but to think about how you wrong them, right? Or how
Right.
they're going to get even.
Yeah.
So if you tell them you're going to do something, you got to stay true to your word and you got to do it.
Right.
Yeah. And then again though, but it's on your time frame though, right? I didn't tell you I was going to do it right now.
Yeah.
I
Exactly.
said I would get to it. I
Right.
just haven't had the opportunity to yet.
Right.
Give me my time.
Yeah.
And as long as you do it, then they'll still
Mhm.
respect it. They may not be happy with the time frame, but
Yeah.
I mean that's oh,
But going back to something you said earlier, I mean, you had to expect that any day could be that day.
yeah,
You know, when I worked at Central, we were finding prison-made weapons,
yeah,
cell phones, and drugs on a regular basis,
absolutely.
every day
Yeah.
of the week. You know, even in the unit that I work now, which is only a level 3, just the other day we found a prison-made weapon that was like 7 to 8 inches long.
Yeah.
You know, and they hadn't quite finished it, but it looked like it was going to be pretty serious.
Sure.
You know,
One of the
so
craftiest weapons I saw was it was a blade made out of melted CD cases.
really,
Yeah,
okay,
very crafty. So, yeah, that's again, that's what they have time to figure out.
yeah.
It's just a game of time for them.
Hmm.
They get creative.
Yes.
So
You know, kind of on that note too, like I've seen them do work and create all these little things that they come up with ideas about how to do stuff that's like super creative.
yeah,
And
some is
like,
really cool.
yeah,
Like
some
you're
of
like,
it's
oh
awesome.
my
It's
God,
like,
super genius. Yeah,
and I've talked to some of these guys that have gotten, they decided that they didn't like the way that they were being treated about this or that, and decided they were going to litigate, and won multiple cases
yeah.
against the Department of Corrections. It's like, if you had put half of that much effort into what you were doing, you you wouldn't be
You
here,
wouldn't be here. Yeah, yeah.
kind of thing. So it's just kind of, it is what it is.
It's
But
interesting. Yeah, it's very interesting.
um,
So
but so I know that most people, I shouldn't say most people. I would say that the focus of multimedia or the mass media is that they focus a lot on guns.
right.
They don't typically report a lot on knives and other like types of attacks that people get. Uh, but I have to imagine that percentage is still pretty high. The number of people that are attacked with edged weapons, right?
Sure, and it's going
S-
to vary obviously from place to place, right?
mhm.
Accessibility, knives are accessible everywhere.
Yeah.
So, but it's not as it, even even though it's happening,
Hmm.
I would say regularly, it's not reported like you said because it doesn't help the narrative. They're not
Hmm.
trying to get rid of kitchen knives, right?
Right.
They're trying to lessen our accessibility to firearms. So
Yeah.
telling us about knife attacks doesn't help them. Yeah.
Right.
So we won't. I don't think we'll hear it much
Yeah.
of it.
S- so what would you say are some of the more important things that people should know about being assaulted with a knife,
Oh man,
if it ever comes to that?
they are knives are extremely dangerous. They
Hmm.
like so for a firearm, while lethal, efficient at what it does,
Hmm.
it attacks in one direction,
Right.
right? Blade, the attack is any angle. Small movements make huge differences in the attack, so extremely difficult to defend against.
Hmm.
I do not want to be on the other end of a blade. I don't care how much I've trained, how good I think I am. I don't want to be there. I
Right.
just don't. As my last resort is okay, I have to go hands on with this guy with a blade.
Hmm.
Best thing to do is distance. Distance, um, things in between you, right? Get barriers between you, whether that's a chair, a table, a car, getting away. If you can, if there's space, time, and time for you to get away, that's your best course.
Hmm.
Second is I can't get away. What can I get between us? What kind of improvised weapon can I use that will give me range?
Hmm.
A chair, picking up a chair, picking up a stick, a bat, whatever, something that has that range um, added for your benefit is going to protect you. And then um, if you have to go hands on, I don't like telling people you're going to get cut because I feel like that sets the precedent that it's okay to get cut. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? It sets you up for to accept failure, and I don't believe in doing that.
Right.
Are the chances of you getting cut high? Yeah,
Right.
it's very possible.
Hmm.
But I'm not going to tell you you're going to get cut. That's always pissed me off when I heard instructors say, that. I'm like, why tell us that?
Yeah.
Like you're just putting in my head that it's okay, and I don't want it to be okay. I don't
Right.
want to get cut.
Yeah.
So I can accept that the probability is high, but the fact that it's 100%, no, I don't want to accept that.
Right.
Right. So if you have to go hands on, I hope that you had trained this before.
Hmm.
So seek training, seek it now, find people who are qualified, and then train it often because fighting is a perishable skill.
Yes.
I
Definitely.
find as long as I've been doing this, I'm 42 now. Like I said, I started boxing when I was 10 and formally trained martial arts when I was 18. There was a time when I thought I was really, really good,
Hmm.
you know, and maybe I was fast, very, very good with very accurate and precise with my movements. I'm older now. I don't train as much as I did.
Right.
And when I try to do some of the stuff I used to do, that lack of consistency in my training shows.
Okay.
I can see it, I can feel it in my timing and everything.
Right.
It is a perishable skill. So if you need to be consistent, and that's hard for people to stomach.
Hmm.
I get asked all the time to teach, can you teach a self-defense seminar? And I'm like, okay, but this is what you have to tell the group that's coming. They're not going to know everything when they leave, period.
Right.
I can't teach them everything in one day, and they will not learn it enough they won't not make it a part of who they are.
Hmm.
All it is an eye opener that they need more training. That's
Right.
all a one time seminar is going to be, is an eye
Hmm.
opener that if you like this, go find a place to do it.
Right.
You know, so train consistently. Obviously in class there's more details, like we have
Hmm.
principles that we go off of, like you remember from offensive knife. It's well, offensive knife is really defensive and offensive at the same time based
Hmm.
on how we train, right?
Yeah.
We're attacking while we're defending. There's little principles that we have, like staying on top was something we focused on a lot,
Hmm.
staying on top of the blade. But I mean, really, that's it. Don't be there if you can be, if you can avoid
Right.
it, don't be there.
Right.
So those precursors to violence, right? If you notice it, or hell, even just don't show up at all.
Yeah.
Like if you know, like there's a party on this side of town that's sketchy, why go?
Yeah. Don't go there.
Don't go,
Yeah.
right? So that's the best piece of advice. And then if you are in a situation where maybe it's not necessarily a violent
Hmm.
place, but violence happens everywhere, right?
Hmm.
Exit if you can.
Hmm.
If you can't exit, then find something to put in between you, some kind of barrier, long ranged weapon. Um, and then from there, if you have to go hands on, I hope you trained.
Hmm.
I hope you trained for it.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And I hope you have some medical training as well.
Yeah.
We do teach some TAC med stuff as well. So at one time I was certified EMT. Um, and I've done training since then with other organizations that teach, how to use tourniquets. So we'll teach how to
Hmm.
do a hasty tourniquet versus, a deliberate tourniquet. And then in some classes we'll go into more depth,
Hmm.
more training, but sometimes like if we just do an edge weapon course, it might be just, this is a hasty tourniquet. This is how you pack a wound, and you'll get to practice these things. And then if it's anywhere in the box here, seal it, that kind of stuff. So very basic but life-saving
Hmm.
material that you can learn quickly. So we'll do that. And we like to do things under stress as well. I get that from my Krav training, stress inoculation. Just it's a huge eye opener to think you're really good at a technique, and then when you're winded and you can barely breathe, and now you're asked to defend yourself, and you're like,
Right.
60% of my technique went out the window. I suck. I actually thought I was good at this,
Right.
but it's just being physically fit to fight also,
Hmm.
right? So we like to do stuff like that, and we'll do that with medical too. So we'll do
Hmm.
a scenario, um, like one of the courses that I'm certified to teach is a active killer defense course from Fit to Fight. So I said I didn't want to name drop, but there's some people who deserve to have
Right.
there's like, because I didn't create what I teach. Like I
Uh-huh.
pull pieces from people.
Hmm.
Sure, there might be some things that I've tweaked to fit my specifications as far as like my abilities, but all in
Hmm.
all, like I said, I've sought excellent training,
Hmm.
and so these people do deserve that to have their recognition, right? So this is one of the courses, right? And so, like we'll do a scenario where there's an active shooter.
Hmm.
After you take out the active shooter, I might say that you were injured. I might not in the scenario. And now you have to apply a tourniquet, or you've subdued the attacker, and now you have to now render aid to somebody else who was shot in the process, right?
Okay.
So that just adds to that stress. And how do you think clearly through that?
Hmm.
So training is a big part of, I think it should be a big part of, if you're serious about self-defense,
Hmm.
self-preservation, training is a big part of it.
Hmm.
Find people who are like-minded, who are willing to put in the work, and spend your Saturday or Sunday
Yeah. Right.
in a
There we
class.
go. So this is something that I've noticed about a lot of people is that they will find something that appeals to them, boxing, jujitsu, some other type of martial art, right? And they'll train essentially just in that one thing.
Right.
And while I wouldn't say that's a bad thing necessarily, because they're still training, they're making themselves healthier and stronger,
Sure.
and they're doing something to be able to defend themselves, right? I think that it's still really good for people to be able to find other things to fill gaps that are missing, because jujitsu by itself is incredible. Jujitsu, when you throw a knife into the equation, that's a whole other thing. Most, I wouldn't say most, but I
Or
think a lot of
multiple
people,
attackers, right?
yeah, they're not thinking of that particular part of the danger.
Right.
I know that law enforcement does things like, retention of like their weapons, things like that. Again, this is another thing you throw into the equation. that changes the dynamic of everything that you're doing,
Absolutely.
right? So where some people might seek out, they say, okay, well, knife fighting, stick fighting, we're going to go study Kali,
Right.
or Eskrima, those kinds of things. Rather than getting locked down into that one thing, how do you propose, or what's your best suggestion for people to like find things to like kind of help again fill in those gaps, but not necessarily give up whatever it is that they're attached to?
Right. Well, you have to expose those gaps to find out
Hmm.
what they are sometimes.
Hmm.
I think I mentioned this earlier. I don't know if we started the podcast or not, or if it was prior to when we were talking. But I found by accident a gaping hole in my game was stand up wrestling.
Hmm.
I had done jujitsu, I had done MMA, I had done Muay Thai, and I had done Krav Maga and Filipino stick, stick and knife fighting,
Hmm.
and I thought I was very versed. And I went to this seminar. Um, it was a seminar with for Kali, and it was a seminar for Krav Maga.
Hmm.
And I almost didn't even go to the Krav Maga section of the class because I had already worked my way through an entire Krav Maga
Right.
organization.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't need this. I was a
Hmm.
little arrogant. I was younger. And I was like, well, I paid for it. I'm going to go.
Yeah.
And it changed my world going to this seminar because we did all this stand up wrestling stuff, simple, basic arm drags and stuff. And
Hmm.
I was like, hey, when do you guys introduce this to your students? And they're like, day one. Are you fucking kidding me? It's like, I've been through an entire program and we never even touched this. And you
Hmm.
do this on day one? He's like, yeah, it's our warm up every day. I was like, holy shit. Right. I was like, I've been trained in the wrong place.
Right. Yeah.
So, needless to say, after that, I continued to train with them
Yeah.
um, because I realized how vital that was to really understand uh, how to fight in the clinch. The
Hmm.
push and pull of the energy is vital, and we stress that a lot. You get that in jujitsu.
Hmm.
There's no doubt on the ground you get that understanding of push and pull of energies.
Hmm.
But if you're not doing it from the feet, it, it's still it's still a different world. It
Hmm.
really is. You do things on your back that you don't do standing up, and vice versa, right?
Hmm.
Like flying arm bars and stuff. Like you can hit an arm bar from the ground.
Right.
It's very unlikely that a lot of people that can hit that from the ground are going to hit that from their feet, right?
Yeah.
It's not the same.
Exactly.
So position yourself and learning the principles of takedowns and
Hmm.
how to take somebody down. Also, how to teaches you how to avoid being taken down,
Right.
and all this wrestling stuff was like I said, that was something that I learned. Like, holy crap! Like,
Hmm.
this is vital. So I would say, and here's the other thing is after having learned that for myself,
Hmm.
see once I started introducing it to my students, seeing their development with and without weapons, catapult was amazing. It just they started to understand the reference of position,
Hmm.
right? Oh, I've been here before, and I know he's pushing me. I can do this. They're pulling against me. I can go this way. Like
Right.
starting to understand that, uh, it was incredible to watch them develop at a level that I had never seen before.
Hmm.
And then once you mix in weapons, it really enhances
Hmm.
how you play with those tools as well. Like
Right.
learning when is appropriate to pull your weapon, when is it safe to do so without it being used against me, and so forth. So I would say if you can wrestle, wrestle. It's a great foundation.
Hmm.
If you want to box or do Muay Thai or Jiu-Jitsu, keep doing it because you love it.
Hmm.
But um, if you're looking, there's a lot of sport involved with martial arts, or there's a lot of tradition in formal martial arts that isn't really uh, conducive to self-defense.
Hmm.
So find a place or a group of people who are willing to test what you're doing in a safe manner,
Hmm.
right? Some of the best training that I feel I ever get is when I'm in a room full of instructors and we're just like, hey, what are we working on today? We
Yeah.
find something and it's like, okay, let's tear it up. Let's break this down. What's your solution to this problem?
Hmm.
Let's find out if it really works.
Right.
If it doesn't, let's see how we make it work. Like
Right.
those are the best training days for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think a good foundation, and you have to put the reps in. There's no easy way about it.
Hmm.
There's no one class. You
Right.
know, there isn't a series of four classes from four different. You can't. You just if you want to, if you're serious about self defense, you it has to become a part of your life, just like physical
Hmm.
fitness.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, if you want to learn how to strike, go find some boxing coaches, some Muay Thai coaches. If you want to learn how to grapple, find some jiu-jitsu coaches,
Right.
find some wrestling coaches. You want to learn how to play with knives, find some people who play with knives. Like,
Right.
you want to shoot, find some good firearms instructors, and
Hmm.
you know, stop shooting down one lane at a target and start moving your body, right?
Hmm.
Those kind of things. So
Yeah.
I wish
So
it was simpler than that. I wish I could tell
no,
you just do this.
yeah,
I wish I could tell you that.
that would be wonderful. But unfortunately, it's like you said. I mean, if you have to be, if this is something that is really important to you and you want to be able to kind of like understand multiple facets of it, you have to be willing to like go train
Yeah.
multiple facets of it,
Right.
because one particular thing isn't going to cover everything.
Right.
Just like you said, boxing, Muay Thai, it makes you awesome at striking. But if you get a really good wrestler or a really good jiu-jitsu person, even a judo person,
Yep.
they're going to take you to the ground, and then all of that goes out the fucking window.
Yep. Yep.
You know, so then you've got to, okay, now what? You got to have those kind of contingency things to know. Same thing with like all of the training that leads up to firearms or knives. Like actual use of deadly force. That's its own thing. It's like you have to understand when it's time to get there and when it's time to like not.
Right.
Just because you're in a situation, or you get into a clinch with somebody, doesn't mean you have to necessarily draw your knife
Right.
or your firearm,
Yep.
right? So this is a thing that, like, when people take concealed carry classes, they need to understand the laws of the state that they live in.
Exactly.
This is a really big deal. There are certain things you can and you cannot do. And if you're following along with what you see in the movies and on TV shows, it's like half the time you're going to be wrong.
Right.
You know, if somebody's attacking you and you shoot that person, they're down on the ground, and then you like kind of follow up with an extra shot to make sure that they stay down.
Yep.
Okay, now you've committed a felony.
Right.
You're going to go to prison.
Right.
Okay, that's. But some people don't understand that.
Right.
So when you're talking about knives and things like that, do you get into that aspect of it of you need to know when it's okay to draw the knife?
We do to an extent. So I definitely tell people that they need to know the laws for where they live,
Hmm.
their state, their city, their town. They need to know them and abide by them,
Hmm.
because not everything requires lethal force. It doesn't justify it.
Right.
So if you're going to pull a firearm, you're going to pull a blade on somebody, it has to be legally justified. Morally justified, that's on you, not me,
Yeah.
right? That's
Right.
on you. But legally, you need to be justified. And I don't get into too much detail because I'm not a lawyer. Like I tell
Hmm.
them, this is on you. You have to be able to articulate that you felt the need to save your life, right? That it was necessary for you to take this course of action.
Right.
And I can't tell you when exactly because situations dictate your responses, right?
Hmm.
And the situation for me in a fight against one or two individuals may justify the use of lethal force to get out of there alive.
Hmm.
It may not, but for my wife, those justifications are vastly different because
Right.
of the level of training and the physical ability to handle the situation is vastly different. So,
Hmm.
um, and I'm not trying to say, I mean, a small guy, even, right? It doesn't have to be a female, but
Hmm.
a smaller or an older man, right, who's not physically capable of fighting, a younger, big male who is intent on hurting him, and we don't know when he's going to stop, right?
Right.
That's a call he has to make, and so
Hmm.
I just encourage them to know the laws.
Hmm.
It will give them some scenarios, but I again, I can't tell you when to pull your blade or your gun,
Right.
So,
Yeah.
but we do address it. We
Yeah.
we do address it to some extent.
Right. So I would imagine that it's on the same level of, if you're going to draw a firearm, you need to be prepared to actually use that firearm,
Yes,
and you need to be 100% accountable.
absolutely,
So the idea that when you fire that weapon, you are responsible for every round that leaves until it stops moving.
absolutely,
That's something that
absolutely,
needs to be in the forefront of your mind before you ever pull that trigger.
absolutely.
I would think that it's the same sort of thing with a blade. It's like if you're drawing a blade, you fully intend to do something with it that means you've reached that point where there is no other recourse.
Right, right.
So,
Yep. And not, like we said, not every situation justifies that use of force. I would, and I don't know this is 100% accurate, but I would venture to suggest that a lot of the cases where we see a firearm or weapon that somebody is carrying for self-defense
Hmm.
used against them is potentially one of those scenarios that you just mentioned where they pull it but don't have the intent to use it. It's
Hmm.
they're trying to scare them away, but this other person is intent on hurting them.
Hmm.
And now they're continuing to close that gap, and this person is not willing to use that tool.
Right.
And so now that person has the
Hmm.
opportunity to take it and use it against them.
Right.
Right. So,
So I've seen that before, like in simulation training, where somebody, they have a simulator screen that's showing
yeah,
scenario, and somebody's going through, and they reach a point where their morality is telling them that they should be doing one thing when the situation dictates something else.
yeah, yeah,
Somebody's coming at them with a, a weapon that is capable of killing them. you know, you have to make that decision that, okay, I have the firearm, I'm going to stop that person before I
right.
allow them to harm me
Yeah,
or allow them to harm somebody else, right?
yep,
Again, the morality, I understand that it's a thing that you have to kind of you have to work that out in your own head.
yep.
But I think that that's something you should do ahead of time and understand if you don't if you haven't quite made that decision in your own mind of what you will do in that situation, you probably shouldn't be in that situation.
Yeah, if you own a firearm or a blade and you're carrying them for
Mm.
self-defense, you have to train with them and you have to do these scenarios at least in your head, run
Right.
through them, right?
Yeah.
Because like you said, in those sim trainings where I mean, that's a good place to find out you don't have it in you,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Because nobody's actually going to get hurt.
Hmm.
That's a great place to find out that you don't have it in you. Don't carry it then,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Just avoid that situation.
Yeah, yeah. Just try
Yeah.
not to be there, But I
Right.
mean, you have to live your life, but
Yeah.
get really good at those pre-indicators and see this. This is a potentially, this is escalating. I can see what's happening over there.
Hmm.
I see this guy's body language. I hear how he's talking to this other person.
Hmm.
Something might pop off. Let's just go. Let's
Yeah.
just not be here.
Right.
Get really good at that.
Yeah.
Just so
So that's another thing too. Do you actually have discussions about um, s- uh, awareness? Like,
we do. And
yeah.
but I'm not gonna. There are people who do a much better job than I at
Hmm.
this. But I have had some training, um, in these recognizing pre-indicators.
Hmm.
I think any law enforcement probably should have some training in this, right?
Right.
Not always the best. I'm the first to say that my self-defense training at the academy was garbage, right?
Yes. Hmm.
Absolute garbage. But I have had like when I got certified to teach Krav Maga to law enforcement.
Hmm.
A part of that was pre-indicators of violence. And then I've had exposure to other people that teach it, but there are people that teach it much better than I do. Um, so I do talk about it. I don't say I teach it, I guess, but it is a topic that we will discuss.
Hmm.
Absolutely, you need to recognize these things, and I would say that um, having the ability to read somebody has probably saved me a few times while
Hmm.
working,
Yeah.
in the unit. So um, being able to recognize this is not a good place to be standing. Let's
Right.
move this conversation over here, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Those kind of things. So
So, kind of going back to the whole DOC thing, one of the very few benefits that I do feel that we get out of that is it's something that they stress to us in the academy is that you always have to be running through your head these scenarios of like, what if?
yeah,
And it teaches us that mindset of like, because just because everything seems like it's okay doesn't mean it is.
right,
If you go back and watch historically, any of the officers that were attacked at different times, it's because they were not situationally aware. They didn't recognize indicators, just like you're talking about. They were being distracted by something else and then got attacked by somebody who was completely unassociated with whatever was going on. It
right,
was just an opportunity that that person found and they took it.
absolutely, yep,
So like again, I think that is something that we do get as a benefit is that they really pump that idea into our head. It's like you should constantly be thinking, what if?
yeah.
You know,
Probably the best thing I learned from the training, I guess, or something that they really tried to hone in on us was complacency kills.
yes, definitely.
I have taken that with me since
Mhm.
since they started preaching it, and from the time that I put my boots away and stopped
Yeah.
putting the uniform on. Complacency kills in everyday life too. If I
Hmm.
people might say that we're paranoid or whatever. We're just aware. We're just trying to be
Right.
aware of the potential threats.
Yeah.
Still live a normal life.
Hmm.
But we're. I think that's probably why people who train tend to have to use their training less, right? They're
Right.
more skilled. Um, don't find themselves in quite the same situations as they're just, you know, they're not necessarily complacent. They're
Hmm.
aware of potential dangers
Hmm.
because they've either trained it in a scenario based class or they've just been time in and time out on the mat. And then you just pick up, you start to subconsciously pick up body language
Oh
and
yeah.
some of these things. You just start, some people either already have learned it from childhood and have carried it on from experiences, or they've been taught that in their adulthood. Um, but that right there can save you, and I really feel like that has saved me from having
Hmm.
to test out my training.
Yeah.
So
Right. Yeah. There you go. Have you ever had any anecdotal like feedback from the training that you've given?
I have. I wish I had a good example for you right now. That's the best, right? To have somebody use it in the field. Well, actually, you know what? I take that back. When we were here,
Hmm.
one of the guys that was in the class was a prior student of mine who
Hmm.
trained with me since he was like 14.
Nice.
And he was working at the jail for the sheriff's department.
Okay.
And he told me actually that one of the things we worked in that class, he's like, man, I actually had to use this one night. So,
Wow.
and I was like, how'd it work out? And he's like, man, it worked out great. I didn't get hit. I didn't get hurt. And
Yeah.
was able to put him down, get him in cuffs, and get him back where he needed to go. So,
Right.
and that was recent, a couple weeks ago that someone
Hmm.
told me that.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right on.
So it always feels good, like when when you're told that, because there's
Right.
validity to what you're doing. It just makes, because I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only guy who teaches this stuff who
Hmm.
questions, like I'm confident in what I know, but what I know
Hmm.
for myself, like I can use it.
Right.
There's that fear, like, am I teaching them the best thing I could? Am I
Hmm.
utilizing their time the best that we can? Right.
Right.
So getting those, like you said, anecdotal notes from somebody who you've taught, it's a good. It's not the only, but it's a good indicator that you might be on the right path, I
Right.
guess. Yeah.
You're doing something right somewhere.
Somewhere.
Yeah. Um, Another thing, like, do you ever do like specifically with just women only classes and teach those or
I don't,
no?
and it's not because I don't like women.
Okay.
I in a lot. I feel like women's only self defense is kind of gimmicky
Okay.
because there isn't a world where it's only women,
Okay.
right?
That's true.
So when you're in an only women's class, you're fighting other women. I
Yes.
get it. Like there's some women who won't train unless they're training with other women because they feel safe.
Hmm.
My wife doesn't want to do jujitsu because she doesn't want a sweaty man all over her, right?
Right.
So that she doesn't know, right?
Yes.
So I get it. I get those circumstances, and you want a situation where you feel comfortable training. And so, like, all power to you. If you're teaching those classes,
Hmm.
that's great to get the women in the door. I just hope you're telling them that self defense is not different for men than it is women. If I teach you how to punch, I'm not going to teach a woman how to punch any differently, right?
Right.
If
Hmm.
I teach you how to play in the push and pull of energy, it's not going to be any different for you than it is going to be her.
Hmm.
There are different sets of, we might have to tweak something because of size,
Hmm.
right? Because I don't care what anyone says, size matters.
Yeah.
Size, strength, agility,
Hmm.
speed, it all plays a factor. Like
Right.
you hear it all the time, and I'm not bashing on jujitsu guys. There's a lot of jujitsu guys that kick my ass, right?
Yeah.
Especially on the ground.
Right.
But you hear it all the time, and it bugs me when they're like, size doesn't matter. I'm like, yeah, it does. Like
Hmm.
if that dude, yeah, he's bigger than you. You're better
Hmm.
than him. But if he was as
Yes.
good as you, he'd fuck you up
Right.
because he's bigger and he's stronger and he's faster than you, right?
Right.
Size does matter.
Yes.
It all is a factor in what's going to
Hmm.
lead to success. It's a part of the pie, right? A part of the
Hmm.
quotient. So,
Yeah.
um, so for women's self defense, if I was to teach it, the first thing I tell them is, guess what? You're going to learn the same thing the guys learn.
Hmm.
There's no difference.
Right.
The only difference is you're going to train with women. I have done women's only self defense, but guess what? At the end of the class, who are they fighting? Fight a man in a
Nice.
suit.
Nice. Yeah.
Why not? Right?
Right.
Like, okay,
Yeah.
you learn this in a safe environment, but here's a stress test.
Yeah.
Here's a six foot plus guy, 200 plus pound. Now use it on him.
Right.
He's not going to hit you necessarily, but you get to hit him as hard as you want. He's in a suit. Go at it, girl. You
Right.
know? So
Right.
I will say women love that. Women are
Mm.
they like to hit. So I think they take more pleasure in it than the guys do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but I guess that makes sense because they I wouldn't say that women don't fight as often, but I think that they don't fight the same way that men do. They don't just out and out brawl like men do.
there's the exception though.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
always
There's
exceptions
always
to
the
everything.
exception. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think just in general, they've just through society or the way that they're raised, they're taught not to fight that way.
Yeah.
They typically still resort to more verbal, more body language, more, non-physical forms of conflict.
Yeah.
Where men are pretty quick to that. It's like
Sure.
we get right to it. It's like, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
You know,
We're probably tiptoeing on some politically non-correct territory here, but
it's okay.
I also think it's cultural as well.
Yeah.
I would say that the women on my mother's side, who's the Hispanic side,
Mhm.
are quicker to fight than the women on my father's side, who are, the Caucasian side.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's a cultural thing.
Yeah,
So,
that's true too.
yeah.
So you went to the Philippines?
No,
No,
no, I've been
didn't
to
go to the
Thailand.
Philippines.
Thailand.
Thailand.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So that cultural thing, do you notice that there? Are
There's some badass women
are
fighting
they?
in Thailand. Oh yeah,
Okay.
and they start at like 3 years old. Like they literally have kids fighting for money at like 4 or 5 years old.
Wow.
I've seen them in the ring. It's
Okay.
insane. Like so in Thailand, it's kind of sad to say, but um, when you're young, when you're a kid, like
Hmm.
to help, they all help the family make money.
Right.
So you either, and I don't want to pigeonhole them to three things,
Okay.
but you see a lot of the family owns a restaurant, or they're fighting, or they're being sold for,
Whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
and it starts young.
right.
So you see a lot of fighters, being boys and girls.
Hmm.
And I think the last time I was there, and this was it's probably 10 years ago or more now at this point. I think my daughter was a year old when last time I went. Um, and at that time, I remember when I was there, they're like, yeah, there's a big uptick in young girls fighting. It's like the new rage. They're betting
Right.
on it. People are betting on these kids
Right.
fighting. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, I think it's very common for men to fight there,
Right.
in the ring.
Yeah.
But at that point, it was becoming more and more common, is what I was told, that young girls were fighting as well. It was becoming more popular.
Right.
So, yeah.
Almost out of a sense of necessity.
I don't know. I'm not
Okay.
really sure what was driving it, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it was a new thing, right? Maybe
Right.
it was, and who knows? I mean, they've been
Hmm.
fighting for generations. I
Right.
don't
Yeah.
know, but
Maybe.
at that time, I think maybe it was, maybe is that like maybe when UFC was inviting women in, like Ronda Rousey and stuff,
Right.
like first women UFC fighters. I don't know.
Right.
So maybe that had some influence on that becoming more popular.
Right.
So who's going to be the next one, right?
Right.
Yeah, well, they'll come out of Thailand. We'll send them over. Yeah.
There you go. So one of the pieces of advice that I typically give to parents, like people that have like really young kids, is like get your kids to practice jujitsu.
Hmm.
And I emphasize that even more for people who have daughters than for sons,
Hmm.
because typically women are more susceptible to being attacked by somebody who's bigger and stronger than they are.
Sure.
Jiu-jitsu will not necessarily erase that whole thing altogether, but it definitely gives them a much stronger advantage.
Absolutely.
It teaches them, if nothing else, how to get away, how to disengage from somebody, and also just how to like control another person and avoid really being harmed. You know.
I think jujitsu does a good job of pairing, even if you're not putting the scenarios in their head, but
Hmm.
preparing a female, a young girl, for a situation where she finds herself on her back being attacked by a man who has
Hmm.
intent to do something.
Right.
That can become a situation where she's never been attacked in that way, but she can, again, it's that familiarity with the training.
Hmm.
I've been in this position before.
Right.
I've had somebody on my guard before. I know what to do. So absolutely, that I would agree with you. That's a great, if you're going to start somewhere, that's a
Hmm.
great place to start for sure.
Yeah.
Get a foundation there.
I just think that it makes them much less likely to panic
Hmm.
because, like you said, now that you've created that familiarity with that type of situation,
Yeah.
and they have a much better understanding of like what to do and how to deal with it. You
I,
know.
I would I would say get that good foundation of learning those basics in
Hmm.
jujitsu, and then at some point add some striking to it,
Right.
because if they've never been hit,
Right.
and I mean even lately, it can shut them down.
Oh yeah.
It can shut somebody down quickly. And then all that jujitsu they learned goes out the window because they've never been hit. So just, even tapping, just getting them aware that they can still get hit. So how do I
Hmm.
defend myself from here, from punches as well, is important.
Hmm.
And not that jujitsu doesn't do that, but there's a lot of places that don't. There's a lot of, they just focus on the sport. So if you
Hmm.
find a jujitsu place that will, even if their focus is sport, but the instructors have another background and they're like, hey, but from a self-defense perspective, um, also have this in your head. Think about
Hmm.
this as well. Like,
Right.
you could get hit here, so how would I defend? Like, back home, one of the jiu-jitsu places is a 10th Planet place, and the owner and head instructor is amazing. Um, and but one of the instructors, the other instructors, is a guy, former police officer.
Hmm.
We went through the ranks in Krav together, so he actually started as one of my Krav instructors, and then we started going up the ranks together. And so he does a good job of balancing that. I think he's a second degree black belt in jiu-jitsu, but he's got black belts in two different, I think Gracie and then 10th Planet, and very well versed, right?
Hmm.
But also that street smart of having been a police officer and having been in fights. And so he does a good job of also saying, hey, but also from a self-defense perspective, think
Hmm.
about this as well.
Right.
So I think it's important. It really is vital to find the right place to train.
Hmm.
And I know when people start, they don't know what that means.
Right.
That doesn't mean anything. Like, I just find that, yeah, I found a place to have fun with. Well, that's a good start.
Yeah.
Find a place that you enjoy going to, so you'll
Hmm.
keep going.
Right.
Right, that's a good start. But as your training evolves, or as your needs of and expectations or goals evolve, I think as long as, if self defense is part of that, you got to find a place that incorporates that mindset.
Hmm.
So adds in this, and then also, like, if you like striking, just to flip the coin, you can't just do boxing,
Right.
right? Like, if you're in a boxing, if you're pigeonholed into that sport, you might get good enough that you wax a lot of people, right?
Right.
But start adding in the other stuff. If you haven't trained it, but
Hmm.
it's not going to be the same story.
Right.
The outcome could be vastly different if you don't land those punches, right?
Hmm.
So diversity for sure.
There you go. So at currently, how often are you teaching classes?
Again, so I don't have a facility anymore that I'm teaching out of regularly.
Hmm.
So it's really just a matter of scheduling a seminar. So I
Hmm.
know that I'm going to be up at Tech Hub, um, potentially a couple times a month. I know
Hmm.
Dan had asked me about getting something on the calendar starting in, I think, January,
Hmm.
February, where we do. So we've got like a 3 class program,
Hmm.
blade program, where we'll do. The first one I ran was all about accessing your blade from the clinch, when and how to access it.
Hmm.
We'll do one on how to use the blade, and then a third class that will evolve from there as well. So, and that's, yeah, it's more geared towards our Tempest design.
Hmm.
Um, because again, my design, I say that because but if you go back to where we started, the
Hmm.
blade came from the training,
Right.
right? But
Hmm.
okay, so the Tempest plays perfectly into what we teach.
Right.
You can still do the same stuff that we do with different blades.
Hmm.
You just won't be quite as efficient.
Gotcha.
So you can still
There you
use
go.
it. You just won't be as efficient.
Yeah.
So when you're controlling somebody, your partner, if they have a Tempest, will also be doing damage.
Hmm.
And so if I'm in that situation, I want to be the one doing the damage.
Right.
Yeah. So
There you go. Awesome. And so as far as like the blade tech part of it, you have the website.
yes.
We you saw the blades there.
Yes.
Do you ever go to like events like any of the gun shows or things like that, or?
I do, yeah. So I'm actually booked to go back to Blade Show in Georgia.
Hmm.
I think it's in June. I could have my dates wrong. So we went to CanCon, which was a cool event, mostly firearms related, obviously.
Right.
There was two, I think there was two other knife vendors there.
Hmm.
And we got really good feedback from the people walking around who had told me that they liked our stuff far better than the other stuff that was there. And I don't know
Right.
what was there because I didn't walk the booth. I didn't walk the event because I was working the booth, right? So I
Right.
didn't get to see everything. Um, last Blade show we did great. Sold a lot of product and the guys around us. And most of it wasn't our handmade because we do handmade stuff also, which
Hmm.
we have two price points, right? Starting off, we have if it's manufactured, it's cheaper because that means I don't have my time invested in it, right?
Right.
It doesn't mean that the quality is not good. We're still using good steel. So we're using S35VN steel with a PVD coating and G10 scales.
Hmm.
So good quality equipment. We're still using G10 or Kydex sheaths. Um, but the handmade ones, they start off. So those, like, let's, for instance, our cheapest knife is our PDX, right?
Hmm.
We used to sell a G10 version of it, and I stopped making because it's really hard. I have a tiny desktop CNC machine, and I can only make two at a time, so it's very time consuming.
Right.
Um, and so I just can't pump out enough volume.
Hmm.
But people love it. Ironically, the cops love it the most. They like
Interesting.
that non-metal signature.
Yeah.
So the G10, it's really strong and durable, and
Hmm.
I mean, the tip can break, right? Because it's not. I mean, even a steel knife can the tip can break, but it's designed to be efficient at what it does, and that's just punch holes, right?
Hmm.
So it does that
Right.
very well. And it's super light. You forget that it's there. I use I'll use a PDX in the steel version, the S35EN. It's still light. It's
Hmm.
heavier than the G10, but it's still light enough that, and I don't need a belt. I just flip it on my gym shorts, and you can go running, you can lift, and
Hmm.
you hardly know it's there. But so those are the G10 we were selling, I think, for 65. And they're out of stock right now. The S35EN version is 119.95.
Hmm.
We are running a sale right now, so if anybody sees this, like I can't guarantee anything before Christmas. At this point, you probably missed the
Right.
boat. It's coming
Right.
after Christmas, right? With shipping, because you know how crazy shipping gets at this
Yeah.
time of year. But they are on sale. I think they're on sale for $80 or something,
Nice.
maybe 75. I have to check my website. You think I'd know this, right?
Yeah.
It's like around 80
Yeah.
bucks, okay? And it
Right.
comes with a sheath
Yeah.
because you can't sell a fixed blade without a sheath.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of people message me like, "Does it come with a sheath?" Yes. Like, how are you
Yeah.
going to carry it if it doesn't?
Right.
It's not a pocket knife. It's not a folder, right?
Exactly.
Um, and then the Tempest starts at or it's 175 for the manufactured one. We are selling those for 125 right now. So
Hmm.
it's a killer deal. Again, S35EN steel. Um, sharp there, razor sharp. My wife gets mad at me because I'm constantly shaving this part of my arm. It's like, stop shaving your arm.
Nice.
So,
Right
but
on.
I gotta test them, right?
There you go.
And then the handmade ones we do with Nitro V. And there's a reason I chose. There's two primary reasons I chose this steel. One, I was hoping to sell a lot to military personnel
Hmm.
because I was back when I was thinking of this design. I was also contracted with the Air Force. I was going on
All right.
base. Yeah, it was really cool to have this experience. I was going on base and I was training some of their security or special operations personnel
Hmm.
twice a week. It was like a 6 month contract. We were supposed to do a year. We ended up not renewing because they had, funds had to go somewhere else, and it kind of sucks because I've always felt like I didn't give them everything I was supposed to because
Hmm.
I expected 12 months. They only got 6, and so the last 2 weeks when I found out we weren't renewing, I tried to. I was like, okay, how do I cram the next 6 months into these last 2 weeks? And so we
Right.
never really got into I would say the better part of the program. The first part was a lot of
Yeah.
fitness and teaching them how to strike and stuff that and
Hmm.
yeah. And so I've always wanted to go back and yeah, I mean, I even do it for free. I don't know if I should say that on there, but yeah, I feel like
Right.
I owe them, you know.
Yeah.
And plus now the program's evolved, right?
Uh-huh.
I spend a lot less time on the stuff that I was working before because a lot of the fitness we can utilize our clinch fighting, our wrestling, our stand up wrestling to get you in shape, right?
Right.
And then work our strikes from there. And really, they want to know how to fight with weapons anyway. So
Yeah,
I think
by
it
and
would be
large.
more suited to what their needs are. But anyway, so going back to the design, I guess, before I get on a tangent and talk forever. So I chose the Nitro V steel because it's highly corrosive resistant, and I
Hmm.
figure, okay, if you're gonna be out in an environment where it's exposed to the elements for extended periods of time, you don't want to worry about your knife corroding. You don't have to worry about oiling it, and I didn't want to have to coat it
Hmm.
if I didn't need to or they didn't want it. Most people just choose a black Cerakote anyway, but
Right.
that's the majority. Um, and then the other reason is how hard I could get the steel.
Hmm.
So Nitro V can get really hard. I think it goes upward of like 65 on the Rockwell or something extremely difficult or extremely hard. Now, obviously, there's balances there too, right? With anything in life, you go too hard, it becomes brittle. So we get it certified to 62 Rockwell. So
Right.
still extremely hard, which means that the blade can get very sharp
Right.
and it can hold that edge. And so it's intended to cut very efficiently, and it can. And
Hmm.
but I tell people all the time, like it's not a utility blade, man. Like
Right.
you're not going to see me cutting boxes and apples and shit with it. Like it has one use.
Yeah.
I still carry a pocket knife for
Right.
all the other stuff.
For everything else. Yeah.
So, but then, so the handmade ones, they start, we have a dagger variant that we make, and that one starts at 449 and goes up depending on how you outfit it.
Hmm.
You go to the website, cranetechknives.com. So
Hmm.
crane, TEC, and then knives.com. And then there's drop down menus. So if you pick the dagger, again, it starts at 449. The double tanto version, the original, is 475 basically, and then
Hmm.
goes up from there. So you do the drop down menu. You can go from G10 scales to you can upgrade to Kieranite, and you can get these really cool patterns. We do custom Cerakoting. A lot of this stuff we brought in house. So I
Hmm.
used to send it out for coating.
Hmm.
Um, my buddy Jason, he owns P4 Coatings. They've been featured in Recoil magazine several times for different
Yeah.
projects. He's extremely good at what he does. He's an artist. And he offered to help me when I started the business because it's, one man show, right? And
Right.
I mean, we're still a very small outfit and um, still, we're not in a big warehouse or anything working. But
Right.
anyway, so the unfortunate thing is despite how good he was at his craft, the gun coat, for whatever reason, I think that's what he was using um, was not as durable as we needed for the blades. In and out
Hmm.
of a Kydex sheath as many times as they come in and out, it was wearing too fast.
Right.
And I didn't feel it was right for me to sell a, a product at this price point if it wasn't going to last, right?
Hmm.
So then I started exploring other coating options. We were looking at DLC for a while. The cost was prohibited because I was trying to keep the cost down.
Right.
Um, as much as I could.
Hmm.
When I first started selling these, I was like not making any money at all because I was trying to keep them under I think $200, I think, or $200 for a handmade knife,
Hmm.
which is unheard of, right?
Right.
Um, so just materials alone, like I'm not making any money, but I'm like, okay, I got to get the product in the hands of some people so they can start talking about it. So I'm
Right.
like, I'm willing to do this and just make no money for a while. Anyway, so we're still not making that much money on it. If you think about the hours it takes to make the knife from start to finish,
Right.
475 in the world of a handmade knife is not that expensive.
Okay.
Going to, um, yeah, like I said, Blade Show, there's knives selling well over
Oh
$1,000,
yeah.
right? Um, and some of them are very simple grinds that I can do in just a matter of minutes.
Right.
Not to take away from these guys because I mean,
Hmm.
not to say I'm like super good because I'm not. I don't even want to be a knife maker.
Okay.
It's not my passion.
Right.
I like to design them. I like to test them to see if they
Yeah.
work, and then train with them. That's what I like to
Hmm.
do. So I am trying to move into a phase where I make less and less handmade knives
Hmm.
um, and more of them are manufactured, right? So it's really I can focus on the training aspect,
Right.
going out to more shows, being in front of the public to talk about them because I mean there's people who understand it, and it's kind of funny tangents all day long.
That's okay.
Um, so when I'm at a show, you asked me I go to shows, right?
Uh-huh.
So if I'm at a show and I'm staying at my booth, the majority of people that come to our booth have no idea why I designed the knife the way I did.
Hmm.
Most of them will be like, "Oh, that's sexy." Like the double tanto is very sexy. It's a good
Yeah.
looking knife.
Right.
They don't know why. They don't know why I designed it like that. They have no clue. And then you'll get one guy who comes up and he will tell me everything about the knife, and I don't have to say anything.
Right.
But that's very far few in between. They understand that person.
Hmm.
When he starts talking, a guy starts talking like that. I'm like, okay, he
Right.
trains.
Yeah.
He understands because he's put a knife in his hand. He's tried these things, and
Yeah.
he knows the limitations of if it's not designed like this,
Right.
right? Uh, and so I'm like, so you gonna get one? Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Like I don't have to go into my whole spiel. So
Hmm.
um, that's more shows are I think imperative to growing the business to where I want it to go. But I can't be the baker,
Right.
I
Yeah.
can't. So but it's hard, like when it's your baby, to trust somebody else to do the work that
Hmm.
you're already doing um, at the same level.
Yeah.
It's difficult because you set a standard for quality, and now you're putting in the hands of somebody else.
Yeah.
It's scary. Wasted material too is hard for
Right.
a small business.
Yeah.
Everything counts when you're trying to recover. When you do a run of manufactured knives, it's tens of thousands of dollars to
Right.
get a minimum order out.
Hmm.
And then you gotta hope to sell them all, quickly.
Yeah.
So just to
So, just out of curiosity, do you think that you're going to eventually move into other things outside of just knives? So, because I'm a big fan of tomahawks. So,
Yes, I have a huge desire to make tomahawk.
I think
I don't think they fit into what I'm doing, like the
not
business
necessarily,
model,
but
but I
yeah.
want to make them. Yes.
Right.
So originally, um, so Crane Tech was instead of TEC, it was TECK,
Okay.
Tactical Everyday Carry Knives, and I'm like, drop the K, because
Right.
that pigeonholes us to knives.
Exactly.
I want to open this up to other things,
Mhm.
and so yes, eventually we'll make other things, but I need to get like our core products and a
Yeah.
couple new ones. I have designs that are
Hmm.
sitting that I've done that I just can't bring to market because it's all about money, right?
Right.
And then there's timing of everything. Like, okay, release this one, give it enough time to
Right.
to sell, and then release the next one and
Hmm.
so forth. And so, but I want to make tomahawks. I do want to do a small, like there'll be different lines. I actually, we're gonna do a mission specific line.
Hmm.
Hopefully, I've talked to the guys that I want to collab with on this project, and it'll be a
Hmm.
line of knives. I'll put their name on it as co-designing to give them their credit.
Right.
Um, and they're all guys who are either active or retired, either law enforcement or military. Um, one is a we got well, one of my buddies is he's active. He was border patrol, now he's active air marine, right? So
Hmm.
I'm like, hey, tell me what kind of knife you guys would like. My other buddy is a retired chief master sergeant for uh the for um the 306, which is oh my god, paratroopers.
Okay.
Sorry. And I'm like, hey, what kind of knife would you guys like? Right.
Yeah.
So, and then my other buddy is retired, just recently retired, chief master sergeant for um, the Navy SEALs.
Nice.
And I'm like, so I got a group of guys who like
Hmm.
have done some stuff,
Right.
know what they need in their field.
Hmm.
Let's do a mission specific line. And so I want to release that also. So we're supposed to collab on, three different designs there. And then I'm open to getting other people who are in a field where
Hmm.
like they have a need. It's like, okay, well, let's figure out what you need. Let's answer.
Right.
Let's do that. Because I don't know exactly what they need. I know what I want, and that's why I've
Right.
designed what I've
Yeah.
designed. But yeah, I would like to offer more things, to be more specific. I don't want to have too many products that now it's like, I just have products that I design and put out and I'll never
Hmm.
sell because it's why.
Right.
I want a reason behind it.
Hmm.
So, but I have some Native American blood in me,
Right.
and so I've always wanted to make a tomahawk.
That's awesome.
So you may see one,
There
yeah,
you
yeah.
go.
Even if there's only two, one for me, one for you,
Yeah,
but
there
you
you
may
go.
see two
I'm
tomahawks.
totally okay with it. Right on.
Yep.
So, Crane Tech Knives, that's the best place to find you, like online, Instagram.
Yeah, so Crane underscore TEC Instagram. Um, I wish I could tell you what my Facebook one is. I'm terrible at social media.
That's okay.
We have a few videos on YouTube. Crane TEC. I'm sure if you just type
Hmm.
in Crane TEC, it'll pop up. And then, uh, yeah, cranetechknives.com is our website. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
That's awesome. So I definitely want to be respectful of your time because I know you got other shit to do. But I'm really glad that you could join us here, and it was great talking with you.
Yeah, I had a
I
good
love
time.
learning more about the company and what you got going on and why you're doing what you're doing. So
Thank you. Yeah, I
yeah,
hope
absolutely.
some of it was worthwhile
Yeah,
hearing me talk.
absolutely.
Appreciate
And
the
thank
verbiage
you for
there.
having a drink with me.
Absolutely. Yeah, I got to finish this thing.
There you go. All right. So again, thank you very much, and hopefully we'll get you back on here sometime.
Absolutely. I love it. Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
All right, on. Sounds good. All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you for listening, and if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, you can now support the Non-Victim Nation by donating via listener support directly on Spotify. Remember, the story of your life is being written right now, and you are the hero.